Great. We're ready to go. And good morning, everyone. It's good to see your faces on Family Squares or Brady Bunch once again. Welcome to our August meeting. To start off, according to 2.2-3.708.2 of the Code of Virginia, we must record our meeting today. We will start off by having everybody state their name and state their location from where they are connecting today. So I am Elda Stanko Downey, connecting from my home. And Elliot, would you like to go first?
Elliot Broyles, coming to you from my office. Kaylee?
Haley Freedy, and I'm coming from my home.
Let's go Tony.
Tony Pierman, coming from my office today.
Thank you. Sherman?
Sherman Stovall, coming from my office.
Thank you. Brent?
Brent Robertson, coming from my home this morning because 7:30 was just a little early to get to the office.
Thank you, Brent. Price? Price, can you hear us? Okay. Let's try Curtis.
Curtis Mills from my home.
Thank you, Curtis. And we'll try Price one more time. Price, are you there? You're muted. Okay. So with these rules, should we there we go. Price.
Nearest Price.
Price, could you also say where you're connecting from, please?
All right, we've got Larry Davidson coming in.
Yeah, great. Price, we're doing a sort of roll call to start the meeting and stating name and where you're connecting from, please. Okay, we'll try that in the chat. Good morning, Larry. How are you?
Good morning. I am at home.
Thank you, Larry. Let's try.
We'll get that. We can get that information later, Elda, and put it in the minutes. Just make sure that we have it. I'm not sure that if he can't hear us and can't type, then it's possible he's just disconnected. We'll find out.
Okay, thank you, Elliot. And we, again, for this meeting, we will have to take a roll call on all votes, and Tony will be doing that roll call as needed. And Elliot will be taking our minutes today. So moving on to our agenda, to start, our first order of business is approval of the minutes from the June 24th meeting. I hope you've had a chance to look over those. And is there a motion to approve these minutes, please?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second, Curtis.
Thank you, Curtis. All approve?
Roll call vote, Tony?
Roll call vote.
Okay. Dr. Downey?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Gutshaw? Mr. Mills?
Yes.
Mr. Stovall?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer's not here, and Mr. Pierman voting aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to the second point on our agenda, public comment. Elliot, do we have anybody joining us for that?
We do not, but in keeping with state code regarding meetings of public bodies, we posted public notice about the meeting and asked that anyone interested in making public comment contact me in advance of this past Friday, the 21st of August. We did not receive any requests to speak at the board this month, and don't have anybody surprising us here this morning, so we can move on.
Thank you. So public comment over. We move on to point 3 on our agenda, which is the report of the executive director and the tenant recruitment and leasing. So back to you, Elliot.
Thank you very much. Just sending Price a text here to see if we can get him on the line. All right, wanted to give a quick update of tenant operating status. We have Bayou Snowballs open. The owner has had some medical issues and can't work at this time, but she still has the spot open quite frequently. She's got school age employees that head back to classes soon, and she's not sure what hours she can work coming up. So that may be a tricky one. We've always made some good concessions for our tenants, obviously, when they're owner operators and can't work. So we'll see kind of what difficulties she faces coming up. But as of now, she's open. Scrambled is running pre-COVID normal hours. Caribica Soul, Tacos Rojas, and Fork in the Market are open with their COVID normal hours slightly adjusted. Wall Street Tavern, Hong Kong, Alibaba, and Blue Ridge Burrito are all still closed at this time. As an update on rent deferrals, every tenant has taken the 3-month deferral approved over the course of the last 2 meetings. Good choice, and has worked. We've caught some people up on rent, and but certainly July was not the end of the issues there. And at the last meeting, the board gave the leasing committee the authority to come up with a plan for August rents, either an additional month or other options based on discussions at that time. We had requests from tenants for additional assistance, and in those cases, we found that an additional month could have a real effect on our tenants' ability to pay past due balances, get caught back up moving forward, and is a last kind of effort to help them, because obviously we can't give free rent for the foreseeable future. So rather than an additional deferred month, the leasing committee and I decided that the best option would be one additional forgiven month of rent as a final statement. That's slightly outside of the authorization the board gave at the last meeting, and therefore I believe will require ratification here today as a decision. Any questions or comments about that? We reviewed financials in our discussion of that, and as you'll see later, and as I'm sure you've reviewed in the financials over the past week, we can handle a situation like that. And it was fairly difficult to get everybody to sign contracts over and over again for deferrals, and in a lot of those cases, we're just never going to see the money again because some of these businesses may go out of business. So anyway, discussion, or we do need a roll call vote to approve that.
So basically, we are going to forgive a month. Is that upon request, or is that across the board?
It's across the board, and every tenant would request it. So, but it's across the board.
So in the aggregate, we've given up to 3 months of deferral plus 1 month forgiveness.
Overall, we gave, at the very beginning, we gave a month, half a month forgiven, and then a full month forgiven, and then 3 months deferred, and now as a final statement, 1 full month forgiven. So we have given.
I think we've been pretty generous. I mean, I think that, you know, we can all say that we've done everything that we could possibly do under the circumstances to help our tenants. So, I mean, I think our cash position allows us to do this, but
I think we have been very flexible and supportive and helpful, and I think we have tried to sort of patch along as circumstances have developed, but this might be probably one of the last things that we can do, even as this continues to unravel and develop.
I agree, Elda, and I think that the leasing committee took that as their thoughts as well. Unless Larry or Price want to chime in here, I think that was exactly their thought as we approved this.
yeah, I think that, you know, as we approve this, I think Elder's point is well taken, certainly agree with that, but I think we also need to communicate that to our tenants.
Okay.
Right. Any other comments on this issue? Okay, so I think we're ready to take a vote on this, and Mr. Pearman will lead us in a roll call. Or actually, first we need that. Sorry, guys. I'm finishing my coffee today. I'm a little late on my caffeine. So first, is there a motion to approve this?
This is Tony. I'll move to approve the recommendation of the leasing committee with the friendly amendment of making sure to make tenants aware that this will probably be our final effort to be able to help them.
Second.
All right. Roll call. Dr. S.
Yes.
Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Gutshaw.
Yes.
Mr. Mills.
Yes.
Mr. Stovall.
Yes.
And Mr. Pearman votes aye. I did confirm via chat. That's the preferred abbreviation of Dr. Stanko Downey's name.
Tell the truth, Tony. You just don't want to say my full name. It's too much.
Like you, I haven't had my coffee yet, so we're all doing the best we can.
All right. So that is passed, correct? Thank you very much. We have one new lease to ratify. Maya's Fish and Chips is moving into the old vegan spot. It is, as approved by the leasing committee, a 38-month lease with the first 2 months free. Lease commences on August 1, 2020. Rent is our standard $1,099 plus utilities billed as additional rent. This is a tenant who approached us even during a pandemic, recognized the opportunity, and is fully aware of the restaurant situation downtown, has some cash on hand and some experience in certainly in business, and is moving forward with a fish and chips restaurant. So those terms are what we need approval of by roll call vote from the board today.
Is there a motion for Maya's Fish and Chips?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Dr. S.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
I believe the second was from Sherman.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. S.
Yes.
Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Gutshaw.
Yes.
Mr. Mills.
Yes.
Mr. Stovall.
Yes.
And Mr. Pearman voting aye.
Thank you very much. All right, we have some leasing items to discuss in closed session. If one of you would like to make a motion to take us into closed session, then a roll call vote to get us in there.
So moved.
Second.
I think there's
Is there verbiage for
there's
that?
some language that needs to be read to make that official.
Larry, would you like to read the cards or would you like me to go ahead?
I'm going to let you do it. Unfortunately, I had a technical issue this morning and I left my office, which is hours and hours away,
Okay.
all the way at the bottom of the elevator. But anyway, I did not bring those cards with me. So if you have them, if you would read them. Otherwise, I can go get them.
I do, sir. I have them right in front of me, so I'll go ahead and read. I move that the foundation go into closed meeting to discuss or consider the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the foundation pursuant to section 2.2-3711, 8.3 of the Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended. So now we can take a second.
Second.
All in favor? Mr. Chairman, roll call.
Sorry, that's me, right? So Dr. S.
Yes.
Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Gutshaw.
Yes.
Mr. Mills.
Yes.
Mr. Stovall.
Yes.
And Mr. Pearman voting aye.
I move that the foundation take a roll call or other recorded vote certifying that to the best of the members' knowledge, one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the foundation.
Okay, Dr. Stanko Downey.
Do you need a second?
That was, we need a
Oh.
second.
So done, so
Sorry.
expressed.
So now, Dr. Stanko Downey,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Gutschall,
Yes.
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Mr. Stovall,
Yes.
and Mr. Pearman voting aye. I can't even say my own name this morning.
All right, and in our long string of procedural things, we now need to approve a lease termination agreement by roll call vote for Blue Ridge Burrito Company, terminating the lease with a payment of $2,737.48, paid in installments monthly over the course of 6 months.
So moved.
Second. Okay. Dr. S.,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Gutschall,
Yes.
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Mr. Stovall,
Yes.
and Mr. Pearman voting aye.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Charter Hall, and I want to start with, I'll give Kaylee the floor here in a second, but Charter Hall Committee and I have been speaking about policies to protect the foundation moving forward with events in Charter Hall. We had 5 weddings and a prom on the schedule for October through the end of the year. And that was some concerning information with all of the changes that are happening because of COVID-19. Many of those weddings would have wanted about 150 people, but 150 to 200 people on average in the space. The state's phase 3 regulations would allow 150 based on our layout, but the best practices recommend allowing enough space for everyone to social distance, which would cut our capacity down to 50 in Charter Hall. So after multiple conversations with Sam Darby related to our liability if people were to get sick, the Charter Hall Committee, made up of Dr. Stanko Downey, Dr. S, as Mr. Pearman refers to her, and Mr. Pearman and I concluded that we should follow the best practices listed in the Commonwealth's phase 3 recommendations, as stated just before. So as these recommendations can change frequently, what we did was tell the organizers of events through the end of October that our max capacity will be 50 due to those recommendations from the state. Many of those events will choose to move. Many have chosen to move, cancel. Some will move with us, possibly. Some will move to other venues that may have outside seating or allow social distancing in a better way. And moving forward, we'll make the decision about events and what regulations to follow at least 2 months in advance of event dates to give the organizers a chance to change, move if they need to. And we're offering as many concessions as possible to get people to stay with us or move to a different date with us rather than somewhere else. So these decisions, it wasn't an easy decision, but after looking at some of the worrisome information, especially from Sam Darby, the concern about the liability that the foundation would hold were someone to get the virus and die, for instance, because they came to a wedding at Charter Hall. We made those decisions. If we were to lose every event from now through the end of the year, then we would experience around $17,000 in lost revenue. But we felt it would be irresponsible to host hundreds of people inside the event space, especially if we're not sure what liability we hold. So, and then also if we if someone chooses to move forward with the regulations, the 50-person max, and some mask requirements, obviously, then we have a waiver for them to sign, a release of liability for those events. So, just wanted to provide that information about Charter Hall as we move forward. Again, we're making that decision kind of on an incremental basis so that we can tell people what our regulations are, and some events are going to cancel.
Have some events been sorry, Larry. Have some events been postponed for 2021?
Kaylee?
Yes, we have had quite a few events, mostly weddings and corporate events that are annual events and things like that, that are just choosing to push things off until 2021. So we have had quite a few, but there have also been quite a few cancellations as well. Even with weddings, going to venues that can host larger amounts or outdoors or various things like that. So.
Sure. Okay.
I was going to ask if the attorneys had offered some kind of waiver of liability if those people who wanted a bigger event wanted to move forward with it. Would they be willing to sign some kind of waiver of liability?
Yeah, Sam Darby actually suggested that the only way it could work with a large event is for each individual person who attends the event to sign away their our responsibility for their health, which is a very tough thing to do. But also we discussed the obligation of us to try to prevent the virus spread and look at the regulations of the state and what they say. So yes, we've got a waiver that the organizer will sign, but also on a large scale, that wouldn't help much because the organizer can't sign away the liability of each individual guest.
Thank you.
And I think, Larry, also the other thing is, we were very cognizant and aware that even in doing so, we're still placing staff, caterers, Kaylee, and others at risk by exposing them to those folks.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think that that's anything that needs a vote from the board. I think the Charter Hall Committee and I and our attorney and Kaylee, who is involved in all these conversations, have made a decision that doesn't necessarily need a vote because it's backed by the state regulations. But anyway, just wanted to bring that up and let everybody know where we are with Charter Hall in that situation. And I will hand it over to Kaylee for the rest of the Charter Hall report.
Awesome. So just a quick update on Kiwanis. Of course, they have not been meeting for the past several months, which of course was just a weekly luncheon that we were hosting for them. Their reboot committee is looking at doing hybrid meetings starting in October, where they would offer, in-house and present presentations, but also have a digital component to it. So we would maximize, or have a maximum of 50 guests for all Kiwanis meetings if they wanted to do that moving forward. It's a pretty good timing as well, because that's when their contract would need to be renewed. So we're working with them and basically having I think we're a COVID flexibility policy in that as well. So that may potentially start up the 1st of October for Kiwanis to come in and meet throughout the end of the year. The past 2 months, of course, we did not hold any events, but with it, we did have a little tiny bit of revenue from held deposits and different things for events that had canceled pre-COVID, as well as other things like that. So there's a little bit on the books for that. We have, since kind of the COVID-19 situation has started, we have booked about 3 events for this space. They are on a much, much smaller scale and things that, there's 2 that are just in December alone. So a little bit further out that we're looking at. And right now with cancellations, event movement, and sales, we're looking at $41,197 for this year. Is what that looks like. So with it, we've had a total of 49 events that have been affected, whether it be moved, rescheduled, or just canceled outright as well. So quite a bit of our budget has gone to that. With it, though, in the past 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks, I've seen that couples are starting to reach out a lot faster. Corporate events are still on hold, but like I said, couples are still starting to look at 2021 as well as 2022 for weddings. They are very, very interested in what our COVID policy is now and what it could potentially be moving forward. Let's say nothing changes, we stay in phase 3, or how we're handling that moving forward for future weddings. But they are still very interested in getting something on the books and having kind of that big day to look forward to next year. So that's what we're seeing, as most couples are looking at fall of next year, not really as much spring, but mostly fall, and then looking at 2022 for weddings. So that's kind of the direction that everything's going in now. And like I said, our inquiries have definitely picked up in the past 3 weeks alone just for that. So we're doing more one-on-one tours as needed since then. So hopefully, like I said, we'll have Kiwanis come back and a couple other things in the books as well. So that's kind of what Charter Hall looks like as of right now.
All right.
I've turned, yes.
Thank you, Kaylee. And moving on to June and July financial statements. We are looking okay, all things considered. Obviously not an ideal situation, but we're ahead of projections, the emergency projections that I did earlier in the year by about $20,000 at this point. In August, we have collected some more rents, and really, other than the businesses that are just not doing well at all, possibly going out of business, there are some bright spots here, and business is picking up sometimes on weekends. Fork in the Market is doing well. So overall, a fairly good situation, and some evidence that things may be picking back up for our restaurants. I hope you all saw the delinquency summary. This is not an aging summary, which would match with a balance sheet, but if we were to have a balance sheet that was completed, we did the math, and it would be about 66,000 in the accounts receivable line. So if you looked at July's balance sheet, which showed our accounts receivable at 124,226, after deferrals and that we have received, that number was actually $66,000 instead of 124, which is still ahead over what we were, where we were last year, but certainly a much better situation than 124,000.
Elliot,
Yes, sir.
my concern and what I wanted you to clarify, please, is on the actual financials, where you, just so I can understand what I'm reading, top line you have rent income, and we're on an accrual system. So does that reflect what we should have received or what we actually have received?
That number reflects what we should have received. And so if you can excuse me, if you can imagine, the deferrals had by the moment that this was printed, the deferrals had not been processed in whole. Excuse me. And so, yeah, every month that there was $23,000 in rent charged over the course of the month, and the deferrals had not been processed yet, then that $23,000 would shift over month by month into year-to-date actual accrual rent. But that's not the case. So that this is a question that Larry asked in email, and I looked up what our actual year-to-date rent income was. I think that number was 74,000. Does that sound correct to you, Larry?
Unfortunately, I had that number at my desk, that information in my desk, and I had to leave there.
I've got it. Hold on one second.
Yeah. The important thing is, I would, if you can, to send that number to everybody, and maybe some kind of short paragraph as to how that actually affects where our bottom line is year to date.
Yeah.
So that we get a better, clear picture. This is a distortion, I think, of where we actually stand.
And that's kind of why sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
That's right. Go ahead.
That's kind of why I've been focusing on our cash on hand figure as the over the past couple of months as we work through deferrals and other situations that are creating just an absolute mess. If we were to look at each individual line of the budget comparison or even the balance sheet at some times, so if you're not just looking at the money in our bank account, if you're looking at accounts receivable, which is wrong, if you're looking at a budget comparison that shows rents that are wrong, until those are all worked out in accounting, the cash number is really the end all be all. And that is what we projected at the beginning of the year, or the beginning of the pandemic. You can see a great comparison in cash versus trying to interpret some of these numbers. The actual number is $74,000 in year-to-date rent that we have collected. So to put that in perspective, our normal months should be around $21,000 to $23,000 in rent. So we've collected some, obviously January, February, we've collected some back rents, but many of those months there has been no rent charged and there's been no rent that's come in. I should have a clearer picture even in the coming days. And I can rerun July's budget comparison. I can rerun July's balance sheet and send those to everybody in the board.
Please.
Just so we can see them. So I understand it's got to be a weird situation on a monthly basis where, we're approving financial sheets that are correct as far as the system goes, but are not correct based on some of the action that we've taken as a board. And I understand that's odd, and I hate to have some of these issues drag on for months, but I think we're at the end of that now. It really is a reflection of how difficult it's been to get everybody to sign deferral agreements, get everybody on site during a pandemic where they may be working another job or just aren't coming into the market building at all. So any other questions about the June or July financials? Then a motion to approve, please.
So moved. This is Tony.
I'll second.
Okay. Dr. S.
Yes.
Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Gutschall.
Yes.
Mr. Mills.
Yes.
Mr. Stovall.
Yes.
And Mr. Pearman voting aye.
Thank you. One more thing in financials. The board at the beginning of the year approved an audit. Since this is our first full audit, it's taken some time to speak with companies and get quotes. After checking pricing, we got pricing from 2 companies. One was significantly higher than the other, and the one with the lower pricing handles a lot of other organizations downtown, Anderson Reed. They've given us the best price. They also handle several other nonprofit organizations downtown, DRI, I think the Science Museum. So their pricing is a little higher, for the first year. They want to do a 3-year agreement with us that would drop by $1,000 or so for the following 2 years and include our taxes for calendar year 20 and 21. I recommended to the finance committee that we choose Anderson Reed after quoting a couple of companies. The audit has already been approved by the board, so I don't think we need a full vote here. Finance committee has agreed with that recommendation, and we will get started as soon as possible on an audit of 2019 financials.
You ready to move on from
Yeah.
the financials? Okay, thank you, Elliot. That was hopefully the only sour spot of our meeting today. So moving on to next item is our facilities report.
So Michael's here with us. We had the opportunity to renew the train contract which we did 3 years ago. And when does it end, Michael? Is that, you're on mute. The actual end date of it?
The end of this month.
So we, Train sent over a bunch of, or 3 different options, a 1-year contract, a 3-year contract, and a 5-year contract, all of which I think had the 1-year contract was a gouge, obviously, and the second, the second 3-year contract was a 4% increase first year, and then 3 year over year, and the 5-year contract was some other increases. So I recall that we had negotiated a flat rate and a drop in price 3 years ago, looked back on some of our records and asked Michael to negotiate us to a modest increase here, 3% for the first year, and then hold steady for 3 years at that pricing, which they agreed to. So we've had some great success negotiating with Train. They're a good company. They've done great work for us in the building, even above and beyond some of the stuff that the contract says. But Michael was able to negotiate a good deal for us here on a 3-year agreement. Michael, do you have any other facility stuff to report?
No, I do not.
Well, I just talked your way through a facilities report then. All right, and that's it for facilities. Elda, with your approval, we'll move on to other items for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And we like short reports. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Moving on to section 7. Any other items for discussion today?
I have a couple. So on a personal note, and as everybody knows, we've got some concerns about schools and school systems opening and closing. As of right now, my oldest son is in 2nd grade in Roanoke County schools, which means he's in school full time. My concern is that the school will shut down at some point during the year. I fully believe that will happen. I don't know how long it will be until it happens, and I don't know how long it will last once it's shut down. My wife has a job in which she cannot leave. They won't. It's in the banking industry, and they can't do the work from home at this time. And so my option here, if my son has to be homeschooled at some point during the year, is to do that myself. And so I've spoken with Dr. S, about, she probably hates that nickname, about working from home during some of that time, teaching my son, and also working at the office, kind of a split schedule. And so obviously we're making a plan for what we feel is an eventual situation here. And I'd be working with the executive committee on what that scheduling looks like if I were to have to teach my son for a couple hours in the morning and then come into work later in the day, or some sort of split schedule there. I wanted to make the full board aware of this situation. I'm sure you're all aware that this exists. But any comment from anybody?
I'll jump in first. As Elliot mentioned, we spoke about this, and I think that this sort of falls in the realm of that, month by month or quarter by quarter, all the changes that we are as a society really going through and having to adapt to. So we spoke in length about it, and I think it's something that can be manageable, and Elliot will provide a plan on how that'll work, and I'm confident that it will work just fine, and we will adapt it and modify it as needed to make sure all the needs of the building are covered in the foundation, and that Elliot is able to also attend to his personal family life as well.
Yeah, Elda, I would agree. And, the only thing I would add is, certainly trust the executive committee to manage that. But, like many of you, I've been worked with Elliot since the beginning. If there were any problems with his work ethic, it would have manifested itself long ago. So I don't have any concerns. And it's just the reality that we're all dealing with, all of us in our personal and professional lives, for sure.
Thank you very much. Second item in other items for discussion, board terms are coming up at the annual meeting 2021. I wanted to give everybody a heads up of the terms that are coming up so that you have time to make a decision to stay on, which you will do, right? So
You're breaking up. You're breaking up. I'm sorry. Hold on.
I expected that from you, Tony. That comment was aimed at you. So we have Dr. Stanko Downey, whose 3-year term as the Chambers rep is up at the annual meeting 2021. Larry Davidson with an at-large position, 3-year term, which ends at the annual meeting 2021. Price Gutschall, our DRI rep, a 3-year term that comes up at the annual meeting 2021. Tony Pierman, who is an at-large member with a 3-year term that ends at the annual meeting 2021. I wanted to make you all aware of that. You don't have to make a decision at this board meeting. I will be speaking with all of you about your possible future with the board coming up. But we're going to start a little early this year since we have so many potential openings there to make sure that we have some continuity here with the board.
And short of making an executive decision to keep this board as is, I believe I have that power, Ellie. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Joking aside, I hope that myself included as one of the folks who would be cycling off, I encourage you to consider staying on for the sake of the continuity in these uncertain times. We've been handled a lot. We've had so many conversations with so many moving pieces that to keep our board as intact as possible going into 2021 would really be a benefit to the foundation. So I know we all have a million commitments going on and things keep changing, but if we could maintain that continuity, I think we would all be very grateful for that. And I'll buy you coffee, a beer when this is over, a cocktail.
Thank you for that, Elda. All right, that's all I've got.
Okay, any other comments, discussion, suggestion, ideas? All right, all that said then, our next scheduled meeting date is October 28th, 2020. Same Zoom venue, same time. Thank you all so very much for tuning in today, and hope everybody is well, staying safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.